just talk, right?
Yeah, you can talk, share your screen, whatever works for you.
All right, great. So it's just not questions. I was just thinking you're going to ask me questions along the way. So, all right. So, guys, so just to tell you a bit about, I can first, what Helena asked me to speak about was my journey really in developing my business, especially as a new immigrant, not Jewish, not being Jewish, not being, having what they call protexia here in Israel, and, starting off on your own, especially as a woman. How did I do some of the things that I did? Okay. So, first of all, as I said, I got married when I first came to Israel, and I have two kids, but I got divorced also 8 years, no, 5 years ago. Yeah, something like this. Don't even remember. Life has been so good, we forget when we actually move on. But I got divorced 5 years ago, and then is when I really decided to start my business. Now, two things. Sometimes we women think we want to have our own businesses because we often think having our own businesses mean that we will have more freedom. Okay, guys, forget about that. There will be no freedom when you have your own business because you have a lot of different things to manage. Okay, not just actually doing the work in your business, but actually managing your business. So, and if you in Israel, especially as a new if you're a new immigrant to Israel, you have to kind of learn a whole new system. Coming from the US, so coming, from London or everywhere, anywhere else that you're coming from, the Israeli bureaucracy is like no other you've ever had before. So all these lawyers you have in this group today, make sure you take their numbers and have them on speed dial because you will obviously need them at some point in your journey as a business owner. With that being said, how did I really grow my business? So I'll tell you, my strategy was that when I began, I knew that I wanted to understand what it is to serve clients in Israel and what is expected of me. How do I get into this language? Because I have a joke almost that I say to my friends back home. I say, Israel is like a cult. It's either you're in or you're out. So there's no way of, in America, you kind of think, okay, you can network in a certain way and get into it. Israelis tend to be very closed-minded and they prefer to work with people they really know and people who look very much like them. So you see what I look like, right? So there's no mistaking that I am not really one of them generally. I remember many times I would go into office spaces and I don't see any other Black people, right? There are 500,000 Ethiopians in Israel, but in the startup world, when you go there, you will see no Black people. There are no Ethiopians so much working. In all of my life, there's only one startup I went to and saw one Ethiopian there. So it's very difficult for Israelis to, first of all, understand that there's a different world because their perception of Black people or minorities are often people that they see in South Tel Aviv, basically, the issues that they had from Eritrea, people coming into their country. So they don't necessarily have this connection. So how did I break that barrier? Is that I had to step up my game really. I had to take it to a different level and prove my knowledge, prove my worth, prove that I know that what I'm doing. Now, again, I'm competing with other agencies. There are 26 other Hubspot agencies in Israel. And two of them, we have like about 5 or 6 of them are really the top partners. Today, I'm number 2 in the country. But that didn't happen because I just happened to be nice looking. It didn't happen because I had protexia. It didn't happen because I went to the army. I didn't come from Shmonim time, let's just say, okay? So when you meet up that kind of group and that kind of, let's call it handshakers who will open the doors for you, you are X'd out. And 2 of my competitors are from ex-Shmonim time or have that army experience. So oftentimes I will come up against them in a deal with a customer and really, people will literally tell me, sorry, Resa, I can't work with you. I know X from the army or he was in Shmonim time with me, so I need to go with him. Now, X cannot do the job, but he chose him because he had that friendship or he had that, personal connection with him. So it was very, very difficult in my first 2 or 3 years figuring out how do I do this. So what I did, and I think this is something that you have to understand can help any of you, because I heard all of you talk about your businesses. And what Helene is doing and what we're doing today is what is absolutely necessary but you have to take it up to another level. So what I've done for 2019 especially, I spent 1 year, because it was the end of 2018, and I said, you know what I'm going to do? For 1 year, I'm going to dedicate myself to do free HubSpot workshops every single month in Google Campus for a day. So I will teach companies with HubSpot how to use HubSpot better. So for one whole day at Google Campus, every single month in 2019, I held those conferences. By mid 2019, by these first 6 months, I had customers really lining up to work with me, because what they understood from that was, I didn't just help them. I didn't just show them the tools. I didn't just show them how to be better, but I was able to use that opportunity to connect with them as well, and really help them understand how working with me is going to be different from working with my competitors. So my advice, my tip number one to you is to do more educational webinars. Show your skills. Don't be afraid to share your secrets, because I'll tell you one secret. People are lazy. They're really not going to execute exactly what you tell them to do. So even if you give them the best tips, and even if you tell them all the tricks in the books, they won't necessarily do it. They will still come back to you to ask you to do it for them. So this is one of the things that I've done very successfully last year. And today, even I continue doing more webinars. So now this year, I've committed to be doing a webinar. Now I took it up a notch. So I'm doing a HubSpot webinar weekly in every time zone that I want my target audience now. So I do 1 week Israel, 1 week London, 1 week US Eastern time, and 1 week US Central time. So that's helping me as well build my awareness. It's helping people to understand who I am, how I can help them, and it's helping me to reach other target audiences. The other tip is, as women, sometimes we feel very much like we don't really want to talk. Like I have a client who happens to be a patent attorney as well, just like Maya. She's doing that same thing. And she says to me, Resa, I'm shy. I don't know how to do a webinar. I don't know how to do a roundtable. And she gets all these invites to do these things. And she's like, no, I'm not sure I really want to do it. Now, guys, man.
Oh, Resa, we lost you for a second. Resa? Okay. We'll wait a couple of minutes, and if Resa doesn't come, then I'll put you into breakout rooms for the second time, and we'll continue her talk after. We'll just have a little break. Perhaps we will do that. Okay. I think that's what we'll do. Okay, great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put you into the second breakout rooms, which will normally be after the talk, but we're going to change up a little bit today. So we'll have a break from Resa's talk and we'll come back to it. So I'm going to put you into the breakout rooms again. Yeah, okay, great. So I'm going to do that. Let me just check I'd finished doing all of those. I have indeed. Okay, great. So I'm going to put you into these. It's now 10 o'clock, so I'll bring you out at 10:15. And again, if there's still somebody you want to speak to, we may have time for a third breakout room, so do just let me know. So in 3, 2, 1.
Sorry, guys.
Resa, sorry, I wasn't sure when you'd be back, so I'll put them into breakout rooms, and then I'll bring them back at 10:15, and you can continue your talk. I'm really sorry, I wasn't sure when you'd be back, so there was a lot of dead air.
Yeah, no worries.
How you doing?
Point is what I know, right? The internet dropped.
Pardon?
No, I said this Zoom work is what's killing our internet these days. Everybody's on Zoom doing for it.
Hold on, I've got one person who's just alone in the room. Gad, are you with us? Gad? Because Jason's alone. Okay, he's gone. Okay, great. Do you have kids who are doing Zoom talks now?
Very much so.
Pardon?
Yes, I do. They're actually doing, my daughter is doing Zoom lessons right now.
It's really hard.
Exactly. So how are you, Helena? How are you managing with all this crazy stuff you do? Yeah. I can't believe you're launching all of all of these networking groups?
Well, I launched Tel Aviv and Bet Shemesh before Corona. Jerusalem, I launched face-to-face kind of during Corona. And Herzliya, this group I launched like only online. We've never been face-to-face for this one. Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard as well because people's timings have changed because of kids and stuff. So people don't want to do mornings anymore. So that's also problematic. So I'm trying to make that work for people. So
but have you, but let me ask you something. Do you you do this as like just a not-for-profit? You don't try to monetize
no,
it?
it's for profit. Oh, hold on.
Okay, so how do you make money today? All those little details will work itself out. Even if you make a mistake, even if you aren't the best speaker, just go out and make sure that you show up and do those events when you get invited to speak. My third tip to you really is, especially as Olim, or even, you know, when you're new to a country, you don't have the family support here, right? So you feel very much like, as you know, Devorah was talking about her services about helping women feel overwhelmed. Now, as a woman, I can tell you, yes, we like to be the nurturers and the savers of the world, okay? So we think we are the homemakers and we have to do everything. And especially, I must tell you, this culture that I came into called Israel, I was married to an Ashkenazi man. Today I'm married to a Sephardi, he's Persian. So one Ashkenazi man had no family. This Persian has 100 family members. So for me, coming to Israel, it's like family overwhelm. I'm like, oh my goodness, why is this Shabbat dinner every Friday? What is this? Too much family time, you know? But what I've learned is actually how to use that family in the end. So sometimes we feel shy to ask for help. Sometimes we feel shy even to give our partners more responsibility, but we have to rely on them in order to build the businesses that we want. Because at the end of the day, you have kids, you have other responsibilities, but you're not alone in this. So one great tip I've received in my life that I really pay attention to when I'm not doing, especially as women, we often like to offer help. We often want to tell people, yes, we can help you. Yes, we can do. But when we need to ask for help or we need to receive help, it's very difficult for us to say, yes, we need that help. So my third tip for you is ask for help. Anybody, you've started this already very well by joining this networking group. There are people in this group that can help you. Don't be shy to reach out and ask a question, ask for help. I know we have a very quid pro quo kind of mentality here in Israel. So if we get something from somebody, we feel very obligated to make sure we can return that favor. And that's great. And it doesn't have to be in the same level. It doesn't have to be in the same opportunity, but maybe you can bake lovely cakes. So if that person did something nice for you, send them a nice cake or do something, you know, that would be appreciative in that level. So my point is really find ways to, you know, get the help you need and use those 3 tips to build your business as you're growing, okay? Now, during the break, Helena and I were talking and she says, you know, Resa, talk a bit about your experience as a Black person here in Israel. Now, this is something I've spoken about a couple of times, but I will just share with you briefly how it is, you know, because this is something I think in Israel we aren't always sensitive about. And we, as I mentioned earlier, you know, when I first came to Israel, I remember that I would walk in the street. Now, my husband, as I told you, my ex-husband, he was Ashkenazi, right? So we lived in a moshav called Neve Monoson. So I moved to Neve Monoson. I'm sitting there and walking the streets or whatever. And people would come to me and they would be like, excuse me, are you a Metapalit? Could you come and clean my house? Or, you know, they would have these reactions when they see me. And I would smile and I would be like, at first I was offended because, you know, I'm a university educator, I have a master's, I, you know, have a job in a startup. So how dare you look at me and call me a Metapalit? But then I realized when I had my first daughter, what was happening. You know, my kids especially, they're mixed, but they see Israel through the lens of the environment they're growing up in. So I remembered when I moved now to Rehovot because I wanted a more mixed community for my kids. And my daughter, you know, she came to the Gananet of my son and she saw my son Gananets that were Ethiopian. She was like, Mommy, they're Black teachers. I never knew there were Black teachers. She's never seen a Black Gananet. So my point was for her, and my experience was realizing that Israelis, it's not like America so much. You know, America has very deep ingrained racism. Israelis just don't know better because they've never really been exposed. Their society is very closed in a way. So instead of feeling offended when people ask me to be their metapated, I started responding things like, sure, but my price is 700 shekels an hour. Are you ready to pay that? Or, yeah, I can, come and clean your house, but, this is the prices I charge. So that kind of turned them off. They were like, what? 700 shekels an hour? What are you doing, But this was my point, I've realized that Israel is not a country, and the people in Israel, they're very, at the end of the day, very compassionate. They tend to be very, what I call lack of manners, let's just say for lack of a better word, but they don't really mean bad. They just live out of the environment they have grown up in. So they don't know how to have that kind of social etiquette that you're accustomed to, especially coming from London or the US. You know the correct things to say. Israel have no correct things to say. They will tell you as it is. So once you've learned not to take those things personally and just take it at the face value that it is and find a way to respond to it, it really, really helps you to, integrate better as well as to grow your business better. So these are my tips for you. This is my little window into my life and how I, built my business. But at this point, I'd just like to pause and hear any questions anybody may have. I'm happy to take them now.
Does anyone have any questions for Resa?
Yeah,
Yes,
I want to understand better your business. What do you do?
So, okay, sure. So what do I do is I do digital marketing for companies. So what happens, for example, I was talking to Karen in my breakout room earlier. So Karen is a website designer. So most companies have a website, but they don't know how to generate leads to that website. They don't understand how to attract people to that website. So I help them build digital campaigns to bring leads to their website and then convert those leads into opportunities for their sales teams. So I generally work with B2B companies, which are mostly in startups and technology companies, because we need to have a long sales process for my campaigns to work. So I don't work with what you call business to consumers or end customers. So like Supercell and their end customers, I don't work with those types of companies. I work with companies that sell to other businesses. So I can help them build campaigns to attract those businesses to their
How do you build these campaigns?
Well, many things, but I use tactics, for example, like PPC, so paid ads, email marketing, landing pages. I do virtual events as well, so host webinars and stuff like we're on right now for the clients. So I do a range of things, managing their social media, all of the digital tactics that encourages people to interact with you.
I have a question. First of all, Resa, I love your energy. I love who you're being, which is awesome. And thank you for sharing your story with us. So one of my two businesses, I own a new beer company here in Israel, and we're going to start doing crowdfunding. And so I was wondering if you have just any general recommendations, because we do want to use it to help get ourselves well known, because our eventual vision actually is just project the success of Israel into the world, by having Israeli beer with Israeli ingredients out in America and all these other places. So I'm curious what do you recommend on how we maximize our opportunities during this crowdfunding opportunity, not just to fundraise, but to also get ourselves known in the market to attract equity fundraising opportunities, or what are your thoughts on that from a digital marketing space?
This is a very good question. And I meet a lot, even during this time where creative people especially are finding it hard to get jobs, right? So all these singers, all the musicians are out of work, and, even all these B2C customers, like as you mentioned, your beer company, it's difficult for them to figure out how to transfer their work to digital. But I'll tell you, there is an opportunity for this market, and specifically to answer your question, you have to find ways to connect to your audience. And again, connecting to your audience is exactly what I'm doing today. Sharing your story, sharing your journey. So what people miss in their marketing process generally is they don't share the backstory. They don't share the mistakes. They don't share the process. So what you should be doing is capturing those moments right now. How are you producing the bears? What are you thinking? What are you wanting? And share that with your audience right now. That makes a big, big impact, because at the end of the day, people generally want to buy from you. They don't really want your product, but because they connect with you and they like what you're about, especially when you're in a competitive space, right? It's beer you're selling. There's lots of options out there. So why would they want your beer? So your beer has a story behind it, and you have to find that story, and you don't even have to find it, it's there, you just have to share it. So your story is all about your journey, why you came up with the idea, why you want to promote Israeli beer, what's so special, this is Israel, what the hell you people know about beer? So kind of find that kind of backstory and share it along your journey and along your marketing. So don't just do the pretty stuff. People think they must have the perfect ad or the perfect banners or the perfect videos. No, keep things authentic, keep things grainy. So even doing a selfie video, even doing things with your camera phone, this is what will bring the authenticity in your marketing, and this is what people will connect with.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any more questions? We have time for a few more. Leora, did you have one? Sorry. You're on mute.
I actually had the same question that was asked, which I'm very interested to hear about what you actually do. But
yeah,
thanks for answering that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Right, and I think it was Stephanie too was talking about her interior design business. I want to give Stephanie a tip as well, because I meet a lot of interior designers as well, who also, especially during Corona, they said to me, Resa, my business either stopped because people didn't want to continue the project because they weren't sure, or even, they actually ran into the problems where they started a project and then the people stopped paying them during the project, right? So they were losing revenue during Corona time, even though the project had to finish because they're renovating a house or renovating a room, and it can't stay like that forever. So I came across a very interesting concept that came from America Radio, a podcast I was listening to. And I think this is what would help, these types of businesses. So Stephanie, for you, what I think, as I mentioned, is, you have to, there's an audience of people now that we are all stuck at home. We need to find ways to make our homes like office spaces, let's just say, or places we want to stay in. But often people don't have big budgets for this, right? They don't want to go into a whole, when they hear the word interior designer, they actually think it means I'm going to spend thousands of dollars and you want more money from me, or you want a long project. But what you can do is try to come up with content or show little tips of how they could rearrange just a part of their house that would make it more comfortable for workspaces. Now, what is happening too in this space is that you can also find ways to do mini projects. Now, I heard one person describe it very well, where she said, what I'm looking for is someone to tell me where I can go and purchase the things that I need to make my space proper. This is Israel. There's so many little nooks and crannies of little shops that sell different things that people don't know where to go when they're looking for certain items. So let's say you showed how to design a mini office space. You could actually say, these are the shops that I purchased these things. These are the costs it costs, and kind of send people to those kind of locations. You will often also have a way to do a partnership with those shops where you can say, listen, I'm doing this video promoting the things I bought from your shop to make this space look good. And would you mind sponsoring the video? Even if they give you 1,000 shekels, the point is they're going to give you money to help sponsor because they want people to know about their shops more. And especially when you're thinking about small shops that really don't get publicity because they're not doing ads, right? People have to find out about them. But the point is, start doing those kinds of content pieces that kind of like really give people hints about how to make their home spaces more beautiful. Make partnerships with shops. Not all of them will agree, but some of them, will agree. Don't go for the IKEAs, right? Try to find those nook and cranny shops that, need the visibility because they need the business, and try to find a way to work with them to show what you can do with their products in those spaces. Okay.
We have time for one more question. Does anybody? Jason.
Can I ask, firstly, thank you so much for coming on here. And I can tell you, it's so amazing to hear your story as a person of color. I've been in software for 6 months and haven't met someone of color, and it's terrible. And I love the fact that you can come here and share your experiences and your insights. And something that was really fascinating for me was you mentioned that in the beginning, when you didn't have a portfolio, you weren't afraid to ask for help from other people. And my question to you is two questions. One is, how did you ask for help? How did you craft that message? When you found those people, maybe on LinkedIn or wherever you found them, how did you reach out and ask them? In other words, how did you get them to have a sit down, a coffee with you, a Zoom with you? And the second thing is, I see that you've done a lot of research in your field. What are some really good podcasts, materials to learn from, anything in the personal growth or to help grow your business?
Great questions, Jason. Wow. And two of my favorite questions I love answering. So good that you
have my
asked.
pen ready.
So first, in terms of networking, yes, I will tell you that in LinkedIn, I will go through LinkedIn often in the beginning and look at companies that I wanted to approach or people I wanted to connect with. And I would just send a generic message that sort of says something like, hey, I noticed, I would find one thing that they did on LinkedIn or something that I see they did, and I'll say, hey, that post you wrote, I really liked, what you said there. It connected with me because of X, Y, Z. And I just people compliments. Now, I'll tell you one more secret, right? The best way to connect with people is to invite them to talk on your podcast or your webinar. So when I tell you to do content, find people that you want to work with and invite them to present on your show. So have a discussion with you on your podcast or show. So if it is that you're planning to, if you're brave enough to begin those types of events, this was my killer, because I had a lot of events, as I told you last year, and I invited a lot of people to speak, and most of those people turned into my customers in the end. And the people who attended were always so impressed by the event that I was doing, that they also wanted to work with me. So this is two of my tips that I will tell you that can work quite easily. Everybody wants a soapbox, so ask them to speak. They all want to know more about you and they want to say yes, okay? Second tip about the thing that you asked me about my books. Yes, I do read a lot. I mean, I think I finish 2 books every week, even though I have a super high schedule. But the books that I read, mostly I listen to them on my Audible. I don't read. I have no time for reading. But every dead space I fill with listening with my books. If I'm washing dishes or if I am driving my car, every opportunity for me is educational. Now, the things that I follow are, because I'm in marketing, I follow a lot of marketing podcasts. So I follow Neil Patel and Eric Sue, Digital Marketing School. I follow the CMO podcast, but there are also business podcasts I read. I listen to a lot. I know Israel is not a fan of Tony Robbins, but he has a wonderful podcast that really brings different business leaders and how they think and how they build their businesses. So I listen to that as well. I do listen to a lot of American solopreneur podcasts. So there are people like Jenna Kutcher, Amy Porterfield, and even though the content isn't always relevant, I like listening to those podcasts to see the format and how the kind of questions they ask. So sometimes it's to be a student of those podcasts and listen to how they phrase questions, listen to how they ask questions, because this is an ability we need to develop as an entrepreneur, how to ask better questions. So try to listen to it for that. And the last one you must listen to is Tim Ferriss' podcast. Tim Ferriss has an amazing podcast that really, he brings a lot of interesting guests, and it really gives you a perspective about different things. And also I love documentaries. So on Netflix, I'm looking at every single documentary that lands. So I just finished watching Gims. This is a French rap artist. It was an amazing documentary. So take a look at that, because it gives you again a perspective of how Black people succeed in white people countries, right? So Gim's story for me, coming from Ivory Coast and succeeding in France, was amazing. So these are my tips for content that you can listen to.
Thank you so much, Resa. Thank you. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed the talk. That was brilliant.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Much. I'm now going to put everyone into the final breakout rooms. It's now 10:37. We'll call it 10:40. I'm going to put you into about 10:55, and then we'll come back and close the meeting. So in 3, 2, 1. Mark, are you able to join your breakout room? Resa, I put you in a